Hello, today we'll be playing one of the most iconic arcade games of all time, Donkey Kong. Now a little backstory before we get into the actual gameplay. Donkey Kong was released in 1981 by Nintendo as a way to create a game which would market to an American audience. They did this by creating a story within the game which had not been seen before. In addition, the general story of Donkey Kong plays an homage to American culture, as we will see later on within the gameplay. Nintendo previously tried and failed with a game called Radar Scope, which was released in 1979, but ultimately failed, and almost bankrupt Nintendo entirely. But the release of Donkey Kong in 1981 ultimately allowed them to push their way into the video game market and become the gaming titans we know and love today. Now that we covered a bit of history, let's get started with the gameplay. Now, we're going to be playing Donkey Kong today on an emulator, since the original cabinets are hard to come by these days and can go for thousands of dollars. We're going to be playing this on a modded mini Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and we're going to be playing with a Wii controller. Now, the original arcade cabinet was a simple joystick and button, so it's not an entirely accurate depiction of what the experience was like back then, but it's pretty close nonetheless, so let's get started. Players to insert a quarter in order to play. So that's what we're going to do, and let's get to it. Now the story is that Jumpman, now known as Mario, had a pet gorilla, who captured his girlfriend Pauline and climbed to the top of a construction site, which is very reminiscent of the iconic film King Kong from the 1930s. Now, it's up to Jumpman to rescue his girlfriend, while avoiding obstacles such as barrels, levers, and fireballs. As you can see from the gameplay, we have to maneuver around the barrels while climbing the ladders in the first level. As you can also see, you can grab a hammer in order to destroy the barrels or the fireballs which are coming at you. Now, this is only the first level, which is a construction site, but as time goes on, you'll encounter different kinds of obstacles such as levers, Now, what's important to note is that Donkey Kong itself was heavily inspired by Popeye, the show and comic from the 1930s all the way into the 1960s. Now, the reason why it's inspired is because just as Popeye is centered around a love triangle, so is Donkey Kong. In addition, the game itself was originally intended to be made into a Popeye game, but Nintendo couldn't reach the licensing agreements with the creators of Popeye. Therefore, they created their own story with Bluto being represented by Donkey Kong, Olive Oil being represented by Pauline, and Popeye being represented by Jumpman. What's interesting about this game is that although the graphics are very simple and the game itself is very repetitive, the levels themselves continue to get harder and harder, similar to most arcade games. Many people still continue to play this game even after its release almost 40 years ago. In fact, the game's high score is a trophy among many players who play in the global market. However, according to professional players such as Steve Wiebe or Robbie Lakeman, the key to reaching a high score is through a competitive approach and memorization of the game. Now, unlike Pac-Man or Space Invaders, Donkey Kong utilizes its level transitions to implement a story into their experience. As soon as you beat the first level of Donkey Kong carries off Pauline onto a different construction site, which not only allows you to advance to a harder level, but ultimately advances the overall story. As you can see here, you don't have to do anything, and yet you still manage to get points. Players such as Robbie Lakeman have figured out that along the way, the game starts to glitch and have managed to use this to their advantage when playing professionally. And now we're gonna be moving on to the next level. As you can see, the level itself looks the same as the first one, but as previously stated, the levels continue to get harder as you continue through the game. As you can see now, the barrels are moving through different directions, and will continue to move that direction until you manage to avoid them. Robbie Lakeman himself said that the key to this game is repetition, because after you've played it 100 times, you can understand what the next move will be. And as you can see, I've been stuck on this level for a while now, and this is about my 20th time trying to beat it, so I've gotten a better understanding of what Robbie Lakeman himself was saying, and I died. So this concludes my gameplay and let's play of Donkey Kong. So thank you for watching, and good night.